A group of paratroopers dropped into the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, not into a battlefield, not behind enemy lines, but onto a tiny island thousands of miles from any major city, where one small hospital was running out of oxygen and one life was hanging by a thread. The island was Tristan da Cunha. It is often described as the most remote inhabited settlement on Earth, home to roughly 250 people. There is no airport, no emergency runway, no quick way out. When a crisis hits, help does not arrive in a few hours. A British warship had to sail for days from the Falkland Islands just to bring a civilian medical team to a place that is already about a week by sea from the nearest major port. And the cause was almost absurdly small. A passenger from a cruise ship had briefly stepped onto the island weeks earlier. After that, a suspected hantavirus outbreak spread quickly, and the only health system on the island came dangerously close to being overwhelmed. But here is the strange part. Tristan da Cunha is not even the most extreme case. In the South Pacific, there is another island with fewer than 50 residents, almost all descended from a tiny group of original settlers. On the eastern coast of Greenland, there is a town locked in by ice for much of the year, and now, without ever asking for it, pulled into the attention of some of the most powerful countries on Earth. These places have schools, clinics, electricity, stores, local governments, and permanent families. But by the normal rules of economics, many of them probably should not still exist. So why do people keep living in places this extreme? Who pays to keep these settlements alive? And how many generations do they have left before distance, nature, and time finally win? Tristan da Cunha, Pitcairn, and Ittoqqortoormiit are not just remote. They sit at the point where distance stops being an inconvenience and becomes a survival problem. Tristan da Cunha stands alone in the South Atlantic. From Cape Town, South Africa, the only way to reach it is by ship, usually after about a week at sea. There is no airstrip, no emergency flight, no nearby island large enough to act as a backup when something goes wrong. Pitcairn is not much easier. To get there, you first fly to Tahiti, then you fly again to Mangareva in French Polynesia. After that, you still need a long boat ride across open ocean, and if you miss the ship, you cannot simply rebook for tomorrow morning. The next chance may be weeks or even months away. Ittoqqortoormiit is different, but just as difficult. This small town sits on the eastern coast of Greenland, surrounded by Arctic wilderness. There are no roads connecting it to other settlements. Getting there can mean a small plane, then a helicopter, sometimes a boat, or in winter, a snowmobile across ice and snow. For tourists, routes like these sound like once-in-a-lifetime expeditions. For the people who live there, they are just the way home. These are not temporary research stations where scientists stay for a few months. People are born there. Children go to school there. Families build homes, raise animals, repair boats, wait for ships, and grow old in places most of the world will never visit. And the farther a place is from the rest of the world, the more expensive ordinary life becomes. A bag of flour is no longer just flour. Medicine is no longer just medicine. A machine part can decide whether a boat keeps running, whether food stays frozen, or whether a small community can keep functioning. In a city, distance means travel time. In places like these, distance means risk. None of these settlements can truly stand on their own financially. That does not mean the people are not working. The problem is much deeper. There are too few people, the logistics are too expensive, and the local economies are too small to pay for all the systems a modern settlement needs. Tristan da Cunha and Pitcairn are British overseas territories. That status keeps them connected to London, not only politically, but financially. British support helps pay for basic services, infrastructure, education, healthcare, civil service salaries, and the small government systems that local taxes could never fully cover. Think about it. A settlement of a few hundred people still needs a school, a clinic, communications, a harbor, emergency planning, public buildings, and administration. Even if every resident paid taxes, the total would never come close to the real cost of keeping the place alive. Pitcairn is the more extreme version. It has fewer than 50 residents, but it still needs a local government, a clinic, a school, communications, landing facilities, and supply ships. Locally, money comes from small sources such as honey, handicrafts, collectible stamps and coins, a little tourism, guest stays, gardens, and fishing. But that kind of income can only do so much. Honey and stamps can support local households. Tourism can bring in extra money when visitors actually make it there, but they cannot pay for medical services, education, communications, emergency support, and the logistics of keeping an official settlement alive. That is where Britain becomes the backbone. Without outside support, Pitcairn might still have people, gardens, fish, and honey, but it might not have the formal systems that make it function as a recognized permanent community. Ittoqqortoormiit is supported through a different path. The town is part of Greenland, an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. Every year, Denmark sends more than $500 million in block funding to Greenland. That money helps pay for public services, schools, healthcare, administration, and basic needs across a territory where people are spread across enormous distances. From the outside, this can seem irrational. Why would governments spend so much money to maintain places with so few people? The answer is not just humanitarian. In remote places, people also represent presence. And presence can mean territory, maritime rights, fishing access, conservation zones, strategic routes, and resources far more valuable than the size of the village itself. Greenland is the clearest example. It sits near key Arctic and North Atlantic routes. It also contains strategic minerals, including rare earth elements used in high technology, clean energy, and defense industries. Names like Vanefjeld and Tanbres keep appearing in discussions about Greenland's mineral future because they are tied to one of the most important supply chain battles in the modern world. So when governments support places like this, they are not only paying for a few hundred people at the edge of the map. They are maintaining presence, rights, and control over spaces much larger than the settlements themselves. In a large city, if something runs out, you order more. On Tristan da Cunha, if something runs out, you wait for the next ship. The island store can only sell what the last shipment brought in. If an item was forgotten, damaged, delayed, or could not be unloaded because of the weather, residents simply have to wait. Sometimes for weeks, sometimes longer. Large ships cannot just dock directly at Tristan. Calshot Harbor is too small and shallow for big supply vessels, so ships have to anchor offshore. Cargo is then transferred into smaller boats, taken to the pier, and unloaded by hand or with limited equipment, and that can only happen when the sea is calm enough. Tristan lies in the roaring 40s, a belt of powerful westerly winds known for rough seas and fast-changing weather. A ship can arrive near the island and still be forced to wait until the ocean allows the work to begin. Pitcairn faces a similar problem on an even smaller scale. Supply ships anchor offshore near Bounty Bay. Cargo is moved into longboats operated by the islanders themselves. From there, everything has to be carried up toward Adamstown, the island's main settlement. In a place like Pitcairn, logistics are not something happening in the background. They are part of daily life. Residents do not just wait for supplies, they help bring them ashore. Ittoqqortoormiit fights a different enemy. Not Atlantic waves, not steep island cliffs, ice. For much of the year, the sea around the town is frozen. Ships cannot come whenever they want. Bulk supplies, especially fuel, depend on a short seasonal window when the water is open enough to navigate. If that window is missed, the entire town has to manage fuel, heating, and supplies much more carefully for the months ahead. Smaller items can arrive by air, but air freight is expensive. And because the main airstrip is outside the town, the final leg still depends on helicopters, boats, snowmobiles, or other seasonal transport. Here, one delay can spread through an entire settlement. If medicine is delayed, the clinic feels it. If fuel is delayed, heating and transport are affected. If a machine part does not arrive, a boat, freezer, generator, or vehicle may stop working. Even trash becomes complicated. In a large city, broken things disappear into a waste system. On a remote island, there is no easy away. Batteries, oil, metal, old machinery, and broken electronics have to be stored, reused, processed, or shipped back out whenever space is available. That means the ship is not only bringing life in, eventually it has to take the leftovers of that life back out. These places do have economies. They are just not economies that behave like normal towns. On Tristan da Cunha, the most important private industry is rock lobster. The waters around the island are home to Tristan rock lobster, a valuable product that is caught, processed, frozen, and shipped to Cape Town before entering international markets. For Tristan, lobster is more than seafood. It is one of the few ways the island's tiny economy connects to the outside world. But life on Tristan does not follow pure market logic. Land is not freely bought and sold. Outsiders cannot simply arrive and purchase property. Land is managed communally, and families use small agricultural plots to grow food for themselves. One area is known for its potato patches, where families grow potatoes and other local staples. Residents also raise livestock. Some needs can be met locally, but local self-sufficiency only goes so far. The island still needs fuel, medicine, building materials, communications equipment, spare parts, and the countless things that can only come from outside. Pitcairn's economy is smaller but unusual. One of its best-known products is honey. Because the island is so isolated, its bees have been protected from some of the diseases and pests that have damaged bee colonies in much of the world. Pitcairn honey is marketed as extremely pure, organic, and rare, and its value comes directly from the island's isolation. Beyond honey, Pitcairn also relies on collectible stamps, crafts, limited tourism, small-scale production, gardens, and fishing. But with fewer than 50 people, none of this can fully support modern public services. Ittoqqortoormiit is different again. There, economy and culture are deeply connected. Traditional hunting remains an important part of Inuit life. Polar bears, seals, whales, and other animals are not only sources of food, they are part of an identity passed down through generations. Tourism is also growing because of the same isolation that makes life difficult. People come to see the Arctic, the ice, the wildlife, the Inuit culture, and the feeling of standing at the edge of the world. Expedition ships and cruise vessels are increasingly interested in places like this, but tourism creates a paradox. A place that was once avoided because it was too isolated is now being sold because of that isolation. Harsh nature becomes an attraction. Distance becomes a product. Still, an economy like this remains fragile. In remote settlements, the economy is never fully separate from the weather. The fragility of these places does not only come from oceans, ice, and cost. It also comes from the history of the people themselves. Tristan da Cunha was permanently settled in the early 19th century. In 1816, Britain placed a small military presence there, partly to prevent the French from using the island in any attempt to rescue Napoleon from exile on St. Helena. When the troops were withdrawn, some people chose to stay. From that tiny beginning, the Tristan community grew. Today, the population descends from a very small number of original settlers. For 2 centuries, they lived on an island that rarely received large numbers of outsiders. As a result, family lines became extremely close. Only a handful of surnames dominate the island. That history has left a medical imprint. A large share of Tristan's population suffers from asthma, and genetic research has connected the condition to a small number of original founders who carried the relevant genes. In a community this small, a single genetic trait can spread widely because partner choices remain limited across generations. Pitcairn has an even more dramatic origin story. In 1790, mutineers from HMS Bounty, together with Tahitian women and men, landed on Pitcairn and burned the ship so they could not be found by the British Navy. From that small group, the modern Pitcairn community was born. It sounds like an adventure legend, but the consequences today are very real. With fewer than 50 residents and only a few family names left, finding a partner without leaving the island is almost impossible. Ittoqqortoormiit has a different story. It is not the result of a tiny group of British settlers or ship mutineers. It is part of the Inuit world of eastern Greenland, where people have lived for generations by reading ice, seasons, animals, and weather. There, the fragility does not come mainly from narrow bloodlines. It comes from a way of life that is becoming harder to maintain. Traditional hunting is still central to local identity. When young people leave, when jobs are scarce, and when public services are easier to provide in larger towns, a community slowly loses the people needed to keep daily life running. The greatest threat to these settlements may not be storms, ice, or distance. It may be age. In Tristan, Pitcairn, and Ittoqqortoormiit, local schools only go so far. After a certain age, young people have to leave. Children from Tristan may continue their education in Britain or South Africa. Children from Pitcairn usually have to go to New Zealand. Young people from Ittoqqortoormiit may go to Nuuk, other towns in Greenland, or Denmark. At first, leaving can look temporary, but for many young people, the outside world does not only offer education, it offers options, friends their own age, jobs that do not exist back home, entertainment, dating, freedom, a wider future. After living with those possibilities, returning home is no longer just a matter of going back. Returning means accepting limits. In Pitcairn, the problem is the sharpest. The population is aging, while the working-age population keeps shrinking. Britain has tried to attract new residents with land and housing support, but the response has been extremely small. That should not be surprising. Even abandoned villages in Italy and Spain, with warmer weather, better food options, and access to major cities within a few hours, struggle to attract new residents. A tiny island that requires a long journey from Tahiti faces an even harder challenge. Tristan is more stable, but the question is still there. If young people must leave for school, and if there are only a few jobs available on the island, every generation faces the same decision. Will they come back? In Ittoqqortoormiit, the issue connects to a larger pattern across Greenland. Many small settlements have lost population as education, healthcare, jobs, and government services become more concentrated in larger towns. This is not simply about young people failing to love their home. Modern systems are easier to run where people are concentrated. For small settlements, state efficiency can feel like a quiet force, pulling the next generation away, one person at a time. Although these places are all remote, they are not heading toward the same future. Tristan da Cunha is not important because its land is large. It is not. The main island is only about 38 square miles, or 98 square kilometers, but the waters attached to Tristan are enormous. Its exclusive economic zone covers about 291,000 square miles, or roughly 754,000 square kilometers, around 265,000 square miles, or about 687,000 square kilometers. Almost 90% of that marine area has been designated as a protected marine zone. That means this tiny island carries a stretch of ocean thousands of times larger than the land itself. So when Britain pays for schools, clinics, communications, and basic services on Tristan, it is not only protecting about 250 people in the middle of the Atlantic, it is also maintaining British presence, maritime rights, conservation control, and influence over one of the most remote ocean spaces on Earth. Pitcairn sits in a much darker position. Basic services are still provided, but its long-term future is hard to imagine. The population is too small. There are too few young people. Medical facilities are limited. For serious care, residents may need to be taken far from the island, and that journey can take days. Pitcairn still exists, but it increasingly looks like a small flame being protected from going out too quickly. Ittoqqortoormiit is more ambiguous. Because it is part of Greenland, public services continue as long as people live there. But the history of nearby settlements shows that small Arctic communities are not guaranteed to survive forever. Not far from Ittoqqortoormiit, Cap Hope was abandoned in 2005. It is a reminder that a settlement can disappear slowly, not because of one dramatic disaster, but because people leave and the community no longer has enough life to refill the empty spaces. At the same time, Ittoqqortoormiit may be entering a new chapter. A planned airport could make access easier. Cruise ships are becoming more interested. The Arctic is appearing more often in global politics. But access does not always mean rescue. An airport can bring doctors, tourists, goods, and opportunity. It can also make leaving easier. So the real question is no longer just whether ships can still arrive or whether governments are still willing to pay. The deeper question is whether enough people still want to call these places home. In 1961, the volcano on Tristan da Cunha erupted. The entire population was evacuated to Britain for 2 years. There, they had access to almost everything their island could not offer: modern hospitals, larger schools, reliable power, roads, stores, entertainment, a much easier life. But when they were given the chance, most of them chose to return. That decision is hard to understand if you only see Tristan as a dot in the middle of the ocean. But for the people who live there, it is not an extreme location. It is home. It is where their families are buried, where their names have history, where every road, cliff, field, and gust of wind feels familiar. The recent health crisis on Tristan shows that the fragility has not gone away. One disease from outside can push the entire system to the edge. One ship that brings visitors can also bring risks too large for such a small island to absorb. In Ittoqqortoormiit, climate change adds another irony. Melting ice can open routes for cruise ships, researchers, and tourists. Access becomes easier. The town appears more often on maps of Arctic travel, but that same ice is also the foundation of local hunting life. When freeze and thaw patterns shift, the movements of polar bears, seals, and other animals shift with them. For outsiders, melting ice can mean opportunity. For local people, it can mean losing the ability to read a landscape their ancestors understood for generations. These three places are not only fighting geography, they are fighting time. As long as ships still arrive, lights still turn on, and governments still pay, life can continue. But the future is not decided only by supplies, subsidies, or new infrastructure. It comes down to something much more fragile: whether the next generation still wants to come home. Because if children leave for school and find a wider life somewhere else, the homes slowly empty. The school loses students. The clinic loses patients. The harbor still stands, but fewer people remain to wait for the next ship. And when that happens, the most remote settlements on Earth may not disappear because of storms, volcanoes, or ice closing the sea. They may disappear because one day, no one comes back.